It's the Awake Space with Laurie Rivers. And this week, I'm really excited to talk to you about a couple of subjects that community members in the Awake Space asked me after last week's podcast. So, we're going to talk about letting go and what that means and give you some tips and hints to do it. I didn't get a chance to record the guided meditation to centering. We'll do that this week. I have time in the studio coming up. Oh, what a week. It seemed like every single platform I use and pay good money for was glitching as Mercury rounded out its shadow phase. Hopefully, we see a little more ease when it comes to interfaces and communication and all sorts of fun stuff. But last week, if you had trouble, you were not alone. Um, we're gonna talk about letting go and strategies for that. And then we're also going to talk about what accountability means as we move through April. The astrology is really pointing to accountability, and everybody points at the bad guy of choice and says, aha, they're going to get theirs. But it means accountability for everybody, and that includes us. And so, along with letting go, I'm going to give you some tips and hints on how to manage accountability without shame, blame, or guilt. Because I think we have this expectation of perfection that is unwarranted. It's just unwarranted. It's unnecessary. That is oppressive. Okay. So remember, as precious as you are, treat yourself that way. So get your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your H2O, get your bevy of choice. And whether we're folding the laundry, taking a hot girl, hot guy walk, walking off the Easter candy, which is on sale now, I think, um, taking the kids to school or not, doing some arts and crafts, baking something yummy, getting out in the garden, enjoying a walk, going to the gym. I don't know how you're getting me fit, but you're doing it. But whatever we're doing, we're going to do it together. I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up. Oh, guys, it's an interesting month. I don't think you're going to be overly disappointed with some events this month. I'm I'm not going to say it's it. Okay, I'm not. So don't go around telling people I said it's it. We do have that uncommonly good day on April 23rd. It could be a lot of things, and I think a lot of it will be economic. I think we're going to see a bump in things that could mean the Straits of Hormuz aren't impaired. It could mean that I don't think there's going to be a ceasefire. I think there's going to be a cease of action. But we'll see. We'll see what happens as we go through this month because it's really volatile energy, but accountability comes for everyone. So the big stuff happening this week. Uh Mars is sextile Uranus on April 8th. It's not that if go ahead if you're an astrologer, laugh, because that's almost like an astrology joke. But Mars is making a very encouraging aspect and egging on the chaotic energy of Uranus. I do think that might be when we see some pretty good seismic activity. I think it'll be at this point on the 8th. It could be offshore in deeper water. It could be a volcano getting ready to form, like happened in Tonga a couple years back. It's that kind of thing. I think we'll definitely see interesting happenings in the Persian Gulf and more trolling. Those Lego videos are something else, don't you think? April 9th, Mars ingresses into Aries, and that's where Mars is at home. It's going to be quick, active, impulsive energy. Impulsive doesn't always mean bad. You can be strategically impulsive. Pay attention to your guidance. But there's this thing I've noticed over the past 30 years, and whenever a planet like Mars, especially, changes signs, we really feel that burst of energy as it leaves the end and the maturity of one sign and pops in new to start off a whole nother series. And so, as Mars leaves Pisces, I think we see like energy that feels like a tidal wave. You know, it doesn't mean we're going to see a tsunami, but it's a cosmic tsunami. Get your surfboard ready. Um, and then Mars is going to conjunct Neptune, and we will see more naval battles, etc. I don't think the United States is going to have that walk in the park like they expected, but I also don't expect this conflict to last as long as some people are thinking it might. I think we'll see a change of mind happen out of the administration. There's some interesting things that come up after the 15th. So let's see. We also have Venus sextile Jupiter. So this is really good energy as far as this is also economic. There's better news than expected in currencies. There's better news than expected in stocks. There might be some headlines that actually boost confidence in the economy. Could be more hiring again. Could be food supply is a lot more stable than people think. It could be things like that. April 14th, we have Mercury sextile Uranus, and Mercury moves into Aries. Now, remember, sextiles are like cheerleading energy. It's very active, supportive energy. We're going to see big communications. I think we're going to see like a world changing headline or a world changing declaration or a world changing communication. That could be people going to the International Court of Justice. It could be very, very fascinating to see how that plays out. So that's all the changing energy we have this week. And that's a lot. And it can be easy to feel overwhelmed. It really can. But we don't have to allow it to drive us. And I'm going to say, even as an astrologer, when I can see this stuff coming, I understand it at a deep level. It still impacts me. Astrologers are not immune to transits. So if you're trying to learn astrology so you can dodge a bullet or two, it's more like as you gain experience, because knowledge isn't power, knowing what to do with the knowledge is. And with experience, you learn how to roll with it. You learn how to surf the cosmic tide. It's really not about avoiding or dodging anything. It's about meeting it with understanding. And understanding isn't dread. And there's been times where I look out, I'm like, oh crap, that's a big wave. you know and when we look at things that way, we kind of set our perceptions up for a challenge that greater than it needs to be. We often craft blocks based on patterns. Okay, we often create blocks based on patterns, and I'm not saying you don't have real challenges, but and how we meet those challenges is what matters. And don't take away from this. I'm telling you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm not. Just because I had to doesn't mean you have to. I would never expect that for anybody, and nor do I recommend it. It's not my favorite experience. That's why I teach what I teach, so you don't have to go through those extreme experiences to get to where your soul would love you to be flourishing. Okay. So, with all this changing energy, there's a lot of supporting energy, especially that Venus sextile Jupiter, and Mars conjunct Neptune. That is like realizing a vision, a personal vision. It's about tuning in and tapping in and connecting to the things that energize you. With Venus in Taurus and Jupiter in Cancer, this is like shake your money makers, all right? And one day I'll tell you the joke about my D&D character. Because anyway, long story, I'm not going to digress. Anyway, so I think I'll talk a little bit in the next segment about how to use that Jupiter sextile or Venus sextile Jupiter energy, and understand that a lot of our attitudes around money are based on religious belief and a misunderstanding of what capitalism is as an economic theory. Well, we're not in capitalism. at all. It died. We have a kleptocracy, that we've had people, the oligarchs, be in control. That's not capitalism. Okay. Capitalism is more of a free exchange, and it wouldn't matter if that capital was a dollar bill, a shiny coin, a shimmering rock, or a cool funky shell. It is an exchange. And it's easy to say, oh, that should be free. But it's kind of like I lived in state parks for a long time because I was married to a state park ranger. And the general public would come in to appreciate nature. And they would often either wild forage or pick up rocks off the beach. And if just one person was doing that, or a small handful of people were doing that, that would be okay. But when there's thousands of people going through, you're disrupting the ecosystem. One of the ways we were able to manage resources was through regulating goods and exchanges. When we deregulated things, that was the problem. And deregulation has nothing to do with not having a free market. Free doesn't mean everything's free either. Our money wounds are caused by social programming, religious indoctrination, social indoctrination, cultural indoctrination. And we often have been taught to believe that it is immoral. But if the only people who are making money are the people who can never feel satisfied, who have honestly a massive money wound, I'm not saying feel bad for them, but you can't be a billionaire if you're easily satisfied, if you're easily pleased. And most of the billionaires you hear about, they're billionaires on paper. Unless they own really solid real assets like land, commodities, things like that. Their stocks, if they cashed all of them out, they'd sink the market. They wouldn't even be able to sell all the holdings they have at one time. So equating money with greed has been the big mistake. Even the axiom people say, money is the root of all evil. That's not the whole quote. It is love of money is the root of all evil. It's okay to sustain yourself. It's okay to be comfortable. It's okay when you know what your enough is. And you don't have to prove your value. So often we're working harder and harder for less and less. And working hard has nothing to do with earning money. That's a lie. That is a social lie. Because the most hardworking people are the poorest people. So it's not about hard work either, but it is about understanding how you feel secure, giving yourself a framework of understanding what resourcing yourself actually looks like, feels like, and renovating your interior life. So we'll talk about that in the next segment. Because I think it's so important. That's why I wrote Healing the Money Wound, your framework to rebuilding confidence, value, and wealth. It isn't prosperity gospel at all. In fact, it's a really practical system that helps you learn how to center into yourself, know what matters to you. Because we think we know what matters to us, but so often when I ask, how can I support you or what do you want out of the reading, people sit there like deer in the headlights. They'll be like, it's hard to know what we want when we've been told it's bad to want what we want. And sometimes it is nice, fuzzy, cozy jammies. And sometimes it is a nicer house. Sometimes it is having somewhere with adequate plumbing. For some, it's having clean air and clean water. Nothing wrong with that desire. So yeah, we'll talk about that because I think it's so important to understand things, not from a typology, just like with astrology. I saw this video on TikTok and it honestly really pissed me off, and it was for better health. Okay. And it was like, I like being put into boxes, was what the person said. I like a horoscope. I like a blah, blah, blah. I like, an Enneagram. I like the Myers-Briggs. And I'm like, do you really want to be put in a box as an astrologer? I've worked for 30 years to show you're not in a box. I personally think it's lazy to want to live out of a box. Why would you want someone else to tell you who you are? Why? Maybe you don't. And I hope so. If you're listening to my podcast, I hope you're not one of the ones who wants to be put into a box, because astrology is not merely a typology. It isn't just telling you who you are. It can show you who you can be when you do the work. When you do the work. And we've got Mercury moving into Aries this week, and that's all about communicating with self, communicating your ideas, your personal dogma, seeing things through your personal lens, being impulsive with your thoughts and your language. Careful what you say, though, when it moves into Aries, because it may go thought to mouth pretty fast. And there are consequences with that, especially as Mercury is conjunct Saturn. Oh, actually, Mercury's not conjunct Saturn until the 20th. So this week we should be fine with our mouths. It could be a difficult travel week, though. So keep your eye open for that. Mercury doesn't ingress Aries until the 14th. But anyway, as we move through this week, it's important to kind of dream in, get clear, learn how to come to center. I will get that audio out. Grounding will become more possible after Uranus pops out of Taurus. Right now, it's in that last bit at 29 degrees, really shaking and moving things. It's gonna be a wild week. It's a good time to learn to let go of outcomes. And I got asked about that in the Awake Space community. And I thought I'd talk about that today, about how to let go. Because let me tell you, as a Scorpio rising with a prominent Pluto at the top of my chart, learning to let go, learning to surrender, learning to dream in to fashion a reality and allow for better, allow for better. That's been a walk most of my adult life, just letting go of how I think things need to go and be open to what unfolds in front of me. And that's not easy. We like to control our outcomes. And I know you guys see me where I am now. I was not always like this. Sometimes when I'm condescending or sarcastic, I'm actually doing it to myself and kind of teasing myself, because I've been that person who held on to the outcome. I've been that person waiting for someone else to get their karma. I've been that person trying to prove they were worth something, trying to make other people proud of me because then I might feel proud of me. I've been through all of that. I've had to see where I carried my programming in my baggage, or I hadn't deconstructed enough, or where I was wanting to be seen as the good guy instead of just doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. When I speak on these things, it's because I have walked it. All right. I'm not sitting in judgment from this pedestal of being, a paragon of virtue. I am anything but. In fact, on purpose at this point, I don't want to be a paragon of virtue. I don't want to start a cult. I want to empower people. Remember, knowledge isn't power unless you know how to use it. So I teach you how to use your power. So one of the ways we get to use our power is learning to let go of it in a different way, not in a disempowering way, but letting go of all the ideas and thought forms around it. So we'll talk about that next. I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up. All right, before we talk about letting go and using our power and letting go of the thought forms that hold us back, I I forgot. We need to do some community shout outs. So, and community news. So, if you haven't filled out the survey about your user experience with the Patreon app or platform, please take the survey. I will pop it into the post that I upload the link to Patreon on. If you have been looking for the videos of this podcast, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, I changed hosts. So you're going to have to go over to the YouTube or to riverside.fm, and I'll post the link of where you can find us in the show notes. If you want to watch the closed captioned videos, if you've been missing out on those, April's an interesting month, and it's a busy month for me personally because I'm busy revising the book. So I revised the cover again, and that's a whole long story. I'll talk about it in Patreon. And then I just finished notes on the interior revision. It's not a whole lot. It's formatting and how I want the book to read, like the words to flow. I know, pardon my Venus and Gemini. I'm picky about that stuff, but I'm so excited. I mean, how can you not love a book that starts out with, "You are not broken"? You are not broken. You are not broken. You adapted. And that is how that book begins. And I teach you how to reinforce your own personal framework to renovate yourself without investigating deep into the wounds, because that does not facilitate healing. Can honestly kind of exacerbate a wound, just like picking at it. But we'll talk a little bit about that more after I walk you through letting go. So, our newest supporting members are Denise, Deborah, Ash, Patty, Inovid. That's a beautiful name. Inovid, Tiffany, Nicole, Illyria, Amy, I'm going to change my glasses. I do not have my reading glasses on. Pardon for the interruption. I am not even going to edit it. It is so late. It is Easter Sunday. I got to wash these glasses or they don't help. I don't really celebrate holidays, but my mom does and my dad does. And my mom and I wore matching dresses. I put a photo up in the Awake Space chats. Um, and my mom's gonna find the picture of her and I from 1972 when we wore really similar dresses. It's not exact, but it was close enough that when I saw the dresses, I had to grab them. But anyway, you'll see. I don't even like to match, okay, but my mom does. So, all right, back to reading out. Let's see. We've got Amy, Nicola, Debbie, Cora, Cosmic Sound Sessions, Irma, Lucy, Emily, Marissa, Shabnam, Ninnan, GNGN, Ninnan, Nana, Nun, Ninnan. I don't know. You guys get creative and I like it. Sin, B, Ava, Christina, Sarah, Teresa, MH, Kelly, Susie, Siobhan, Ronica, Marcy, Christy, Zin, Jenny, Black Cat with a K, Caitlin, Kate OC, BMP, Sarah, Chantel Z, Simply Sugar News, Mochi Cat, Niv, 759DP, Frey, Nolani, Nat, Heather, Dora, Mero, Brittany, Lisette, Scarlet, Amethyst, Wistful Mauve, Asena, and Nicole. Thank you all for supporting the podcast. Without you, there is no me. There is no The Awake Space. We purposely do not take sponsorship at this time. I mean, we're open to sponsorship. Okay. We're open to sponsorship. I'm not doing ads because I can't guarantee whose ads going to run on my podcast. I don't have that kind of control over it, and I think the awake space is deserving to be its wild and wacky self and not have products up on it that people are going to align with in my audience. So, you know me. They call me Astro Mom, Astro Auntie, that bee woman who will take you down. But anyway, I want to thank all of you, including our free members. And right now, if you're a free member, you do have a special offer to join with a new account and save on either the magazine tier or the astrology crew tier, where you get like massive amounts of astrology education. And you can save 40% on annual subscriptions. All right. Now, hey, if you're looking for the what's in the headline segments, I'm not even putting clips up onto social media anymore. And hear me out before you get mad, okay? Because I know a lot of you listen to the podcast and you look forward to those clips on social media, but they're not the whole clip and they're often out of context. And I've just put them in, and even $5 level gets them, but they get them on Tuesdays. The magazine subscribers get them on Mondays ahead of it because they come out of the magazine. And I'm doing that because I mean, YouTube's a little bit better with nuance, but TikTok isn't. And there's other things I want to put onto TikTok. I'll be making more skits and blah, blah, blah. I've got some content I'm planning. I just really wanted to finish the book first. So, and I was talking about that a little bit earlier. We'll wind up the podcast with some information that will help you navigate this week. But first, let's talk about letting go of outcomes because that's integral to this process. And instead of beating yourself up for, I don't do it right, I'm not good at it, Laurie, it's easy for you to say, bitch, I'm a Scorpio rising, okay? And I have Pluto in the 10th house. It's sextile my Mercury and my Sun. Please. I was the biggest control freak on the planet when I was younger. I had everything planned to the nth degree, and when the plan spun out, so did I. So, learning how to let go because the universe put me in many a situation where things were completely out of my control. Not fun. That's one of the things that led me to astrology is psychology wasn't answering my questions. We didn't know as much about the brain. We didn't know about neuroplasticity yet. But we didn't really know about neuroplasticity in the popular world until around 2007, 2008. I mean, if you were ahead of the curve, you maybe were hearing about it 2005, 2006. But neuroplasticity is a relatively new concept. All right. And I can't isn't part of the process. That that phrase doesn't work. And everybody has something. All right. Everybody's been through something, whether it was accidental or, on purpose trauma or what have you. I am never diminishing what you've been through. But I have been very concerned, especially over the last 20 years, about where psychology has gone in overcorrecting into trauma informed, because there's a big difference between how we communicate, okay, and how we communicate with people who have been through extreme life events or even the big world changes we're going through now. I mean, we've gone collectively through trauma. We're currently in collective trauma. But there's a big difference in how we speak with one another, communicate with one another, and how we enable one another. And as we're moving into a season of accountability, coming up in just a few short weeks, it's not just the bad guys, it is all of us. And accountability does not mean punishment always. Accountability means to take account, to be like, I did that. I did that. A person I love very much who was going through a Saturn return called me up and said, I need some referrals to a mental health practitioner because I've realized it's my own shitty thinking that put me here. And I said, wow, that's a really brave thing to admit. And you're right to some degree. And it's not all your shitty thinking that got you there. There's a lot of circumstantial things. But if we can get a handle on our thinking, and I'm not talking about just mindset, because it's a lot bigger than mindset. All those programs that hype you up with mindset changes and affirmations that are empty. I'm not saying affirmations don't work. They do when they're done correctly. Most times they're not, okay? Just most times they're not done correctly. Learning to take time and take pause, which is what we do in the work in Laurie's test lab. And those videos are meant to be done boom, 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 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 12 days. Okay, 12 days. And because it's an entire process you're learning, you're not there to perfect each step. You're there to learn the steps so you can do the practice. And then it's reiterative, meaning it repeats over and over and over again until you get good at it, like riding a bike or learning how to write your name or learning how to read, any basic skill. And we're not taught these basic skills. We're not. People barely talk to their kids, let alone read to them. And I know we're all overwhelmed, and a little screen time gives you a minute to go to the bathroom and maybe eat a sandwich or something. But so many people don't even communicate. So how do you learn how to communicate? We are creatures that must communicate with one another. And we are seeing the end result of people not having cultivated communication skills on a wide scale in this country, and not just one side of the aisle. There's a lot of lack of listening skills. I was talking about this when Saturn was in Aquarius, is people needed to develop listening skills, not just nodding your head and saying, waiting for your chance to speak, but truly absorbing what someone is telling you. And trust me, as somebody who talks for a living, people sure as hell hear what they want to hear. And there's nothing we can do about that. And that's my segue into letting go of outcomes. There are outcomes you can control when all of the factors are in your hands. But let's say you're gardening and it's a really dry year and there are water restrictions and your garden burns and it dries up. That's out of your control. It's very stressful, but it's also out of your control. There are things within your control. If you have water restrictions on the outside, you could bring some of the easier to transplant plants into the house and put them in a window where they're not going to get like super direct sunlight. Because this is something they don't tell you when it comes to gardening. When they're talking about direct sunlight, they're talking about the more northern climates that have a lot of shade. And so direct is a little bit different in that respect. But if you're trying to grow tomatoes in direct sunlight somewhere where the sun is very intense, you need shade cloth or put them on the porch because there's plenty of sunlight that comes through there. But knowing what you can do and what you can't do are important. Hinging all of your hopes and your happiness on one particular person getting theirs, getting their comeuppance, it's crazy making, because you're probably not going to get the outcome you want. But the same goes for like if you're looking for your dream job. I mean, is there a dream job? You can have a calling. You can have a job that pays the bills and do your calling in time that you have or at the job. I got asked this beautiful question, and I'm sorry I can't remember who asked it, but they were doing Instacart and they ended up making somebody's day. Okay, it was I can't remember the exact situation, but they ended up communicating with the client because what the client wanted wasn't in stock. They reached out, the client got back to them, they got the replacement item, and when they delivered it, the person was visibly relieved, like really relieved. This mattered to them. And they said, "Hey, I want to ask, is doing Instacart a way of being of service? You said be involved locally. Does that count?" I'm like, "It does count. You don't have to be, I mean, please, if you feel like running for a local office, do it. But when you're working in community, community takes all shapes and forms. I've been given the most beautiful wisdom by clerks at the checkout at the grocery store. They were just the instrument for the wisdom I needed that day. Or when my kids were really little and we first came back to America, and America treats children and families very different than they did in the Middle East. Their children are precious. Okay. Here, they're an inconvenience and an annoyance. And my kids were just being kids, but I was keeping them occupied. Okay. We were playing rocks, paper, scissors at the table while we were waiting for whatever we were going to eat. And this old lady came up, and God knows what old was because I was 29. So she could have been my age, but I think she was older. I think she was more like in her 70s or 80s. But to me at 29, she was old. And she stopped by the table and she didn't have a smile on her face. So I was expecting, why did you bring kids? It wasn't even a nice, it was like a Denny's. Okay. So it wasn't like a fine eating establishment. But she came at, and then with the serious face. So she just had a resting bitch face like I do. And then she put her hand on the table and she looked me directly in the eyes and she said, "You are a wonderful mother. You have such good kids." And I needed that more than I knew, to have this elder just validate that I was parenting, that I was making an effort. And that's different than being like seeking approval. It was just sometimes we do need approval. I'm not saying we never need it, but when that's all we're doing is seeking approval and never self-validating, like I knew I was actively parenting. To have a witness to that was really special. Okay. So again, I'm not saying that we don't have struggles. And I'm not saying that wouldn't it be nice if the world wasn't the shit show it is, but we were always going to be going through massive systemic change. It would just take different flavors. We still have climate change. And in fact, it's going to accelerate a little bit because we have these dumbos doing things that aren't great for the environment right now. That is out of our control. What is in our control is looking at where we're at and what are our current needs. Okay. How can we be of service? Well, being kind to one another is a big one right now. Just smiling, just saying, "You got it, mom. You got it, dad." Or "Look at you working hard." Just acknowledging somebody, saying, "Hey, hope you're having a good day," and walking on. Looking somebody in the eyes. And look, I don't like to give eye contact. I'm not a fan. I'm really not. I have mastered the art of looking like I'm giving you eye contact without giving it. But making sure you meet somebody and just say, "I hope you have a really good day." It can change the trajectory for someone. Those seem inconsequential when we're looking at vast world problems. But imagine if all of us did something just a little more kindly. Okay. Now, back to letting go of outcomes. My favorite thing is to ask myself questions, kind of coach myself through it. It's like, can I change that? Can I fix it? What is there that I can do? And then I make a list of the things I can do very realistically. This is within my power. I don't make a list of what isn't in my power. I just make a list of what is in my power. If it is nothing, like this situation is bigger than me, climate change. What can I do? I can mitigate where I live. Okay. How have I mitigated so far? What do I need to do next? Like immediately next, not the next 5 years. What can I do today, tomorrow, the next day? And we may not know what we need to do in 5 years. We're going through a really big time of change. That's why when people ask me, "Well, what about 2027? What about 2028? What about 2029? Live through this year. Okay. Don't We'll get there. Just know that we're in a time of enduring change. We've got to meet the moment by moment by moment. So look at what you can do. My life will never be the same if I don't get the perfect job. Have you noticed what's going on in the world? Corporations are changing. We're going to see private equity kind of implode on itself over the next couple of years and maybe sooner. I think there's going to be a rehiring spree starting maybe in May, maybe a little before that, as companies realize their, rush to their AI gold rush is not giving them the dividends they were hoping to get. I don't think AI is going away, but I think it is not the efficiency tool they thought it would be. We're already starting to see evidence of that. So some of those people jobs will be coming back. Not all, but some. Okay. I'm not saying be grateful for what you've got, although it helps to be appreciative. Like count your blessings. Were you able to pay your rent? Woo. Could you pay your utilities? Woo woo. Could you buy groceries? Woo woo. Maybe not all on the same paycheck, but you could do it, right? And if you're better off than that, don't feel guilty about it. Be appreciative of it. I am so glad I can do all these things. I remember when I couldn't. I know I'm freaking out now, but I remember when I got to the very place I'm at and it seemed like a miracle. Or I was so grateful to finally have gotten to this place. That helps. It takes pressure off. You want to take the pressure off. Years ago, and I mean years ago, I was in my late 30s and I was in my last round of seeking justice. And I called lawyer after lawyer after lawyer, and I was seeking my revenge and getting my pound of flesh, and it was all deserved. Okay. And I got to a US Attorney General and I explained the story. And it wasn't just for me, it was for potential other victims as well. And he very kindly listened. He didn't poo poo me, he didn't diminish my story. In fact, he said, I believe you. And he said, you know, I've seen these kind of cases many times. They drag on, and without physical evidence, even though you're within the statute of limitation, because they changed the laws, you won't win. And I was like, yeah, I was afraid of that. And I started to kind of tear up a little bit. And he said, how long has this taken over your life? Like, how long have you been living with this? And I told him, and it was a very, very long time. And he said, I just want to ask you. And he said, I just want to ask you, how much longer do you want to live with this? How much longer do you want it to consume you? I said, well, I don't want it to consume me. I want to be free. And then I said, my concern is they travel a lot and they go all these different places. And he said, well, we can take care of that. I said, okay. And I got off the phone and I cried and I cried. I mean, heart wrenching sobs, hot, big tears to the point where your eyes are swollen, a snotty mess on my front porch in my garden surrounding me. And I probably cried for a good 45 minutes, just saying, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I could do. There's nothing I can do. And there wasn't. There wasn't a damn thing I could do. I'd done everything I could do. And it was at that point when I recognized I have done everything I can do. That it switched from powerless to empowered. And all of a sudden I went, there is nothing I can do. I've done everything I can do. I've done everything I can do. I have done everything I can do. I have done everything I can do. And all of a sudden, I felt this, like the chains come off, that my everything cleared. And I realized the only thing left to do was live my life because I hadn't been. I'd been healing. And I felt robbed of the time that I spent, that I could have been doing other things, but I had to do these deep dives in healing, really, really intense work. And this was an important part of the healing, was realizing. Because the more I thought about it, because he kind of asked me that too. So let's say you win. What does it do for you? And he wasn't being like challenging me. He wasn't being like, well, what would it do? No, no, no. He was soft and caring. He had empathy. And I was like, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. So I did think about it. And it wouldn't have changed anything. I might have had temporary satisfaction, but it wouldn't have changed how I lived my life. That was up to me. That was in my control. Because it's not a step to healing. Healing is fully in your power and good resources, right? Being able to get good resources. But the desire to heal, finding the resources to help yourself heal, the resources, researching it, that's in your power. You can. You can ask for help. You can find other people who've done it before you, who hopefully blazed a trail to make it easier for you, you know? Letting go takes a minute. And it's letting go of the ideas and the thought forms of what you think it's going to give you. Because you may just be pursuing it because you think that's what you're supposed to do without really having thought about what does it do for you? Does it liberate you? Does it empower you? What does it help you do? Who does it make you as a person? So as you go about your week this week, when you're getting upset about things out of your control, there's nothing, you can't stop the bombs. You can't make people not say stupid shit. You can't make people online be smarter. Because trust me, if you've been reading the Artemis 2 video comments, you could be dumber by the end of reading them. And I mean, most of it. I'm like, oh God, walk away. That's what I've been walking away. It's really important to really pay attention to what you can do. What can I do? I can go to my local store and give a local business some business. I can go say hi to my neighbors. I can check on a friend who hasn't been feeling well. I can sit and journal. I can work on my resume. If I've sent the same resume 20 times, maybe I need to change it up. If I think I can't survive without that dream job, that it'll make me less of a person, then I'm going to ask myself, who will I be if I actually get the job? If I'm not good enough because I didn't get it, then who would I be if I had it? Ask yourself that. What does that get me? Because sometimes we get what we want and we find out that's not what we wanted. Drop a comment if that's ever happened to you. So, how do you let go of outcomes? You self examine. What is in my power? Don't focus on what isn't in your power. Focus on what is. Okay. What can I do right now? What can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? Who am I when this result comes in? Because, if it involves one other person, the total outcome is not in your control. And you can bully and force and nitpick and badger all day long. And I'm not saying you would, but it's not going to make that collaboration any easier. And if you're not with the right collaborators to get where you want to go, then what would the right collaborators be like? How would they think? How would they take action? What would it be like to trust a cohort to work with? This is where you want to ask open-ended questions. And then maybe journal a little bit about it, script it out a little bit, or write down bullet points about the things you can do in the moment. It doesn't mean you won't ever feel like things are so big and too big and you can't fix it. And you do feel small and you do feel powerless. We all have those moments. I have those moments. I am just much quicker at turning my attention now. I didn't used to be. I used to anguish over world events. A lot of the current world events today stem from issues that go way back, even before I became aware of them in the 80s and 90s. We have had ongoing problems, ongoing rhetoric, but the rhetoric isn't holding as much anymore. And we can celebrate that, celebrate what is working, celebrate where people aren't being fooled. And that will make all the difference. All right. I hope that helped. If you have more questions about letting go of outcomes and how you do that, let me know. Let's do a little money framework talk because it's really not about mindset. Mindset alone isn't going to fix it. And the reason why is you have patterns, right? You have patterns and pathways that have been created, some in childhood, especially in childhood, before you could really cognify it. If your parents were always worried about the bills or whatever, you might have taken like bills to be a scary thing because that's how you saw your parents reacting. It's no blame on your parents because they learned it from somewhere too. Okay. And you'd be like, I don't know, my parents were pretty lame. Well, we can blame your parents if you want, but it goes back further than them, is my point. Because our social cultural programming is way older than a singular generation. So I've got my manuscript here. I'm not going to lie, I will be forever grateful to the book designer at Book Baby who fixed my chapters. Woo! That was great. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of the blurb. This book isn't out yet. We're still in revisions, meaning like we're getting the layout right and the cover right. And if you're in the awake space, you'll have first access on pre-sales, and then we'll start doing it here at the podcast. But you guys will know, I'm very excited about this. I translated all of the astrological information that informed me into plain language. So even if you don't have a birth time, you'll be able to use this. Even if you don't know what day you were born, you'll be able to use this. And I'm very, very excited. So I just want you to hear this little bit and then we'll talk about it. Money behavior is not a reflection of character. It is a reflection of learned structure. So remember, I've been talking about renovating ourselves because we always talk about deconstruction, but deconstruction alone leaves a vacuum. Where do you go next? And by the way, our lives are like big fixer uppers. The renovation is never done. The deconstruction keeps happening. We're going to find one more thing. There's going to be a hole that needs plugging. There's going to be wiring that needs to be redone. It's an ongoing, the roof needs fixing. The basement needs finishing. The cupboards need replacing. If you've ever worked on a fixer upper, you know what I'm talking about. So learn to structure. And so when we can look at it without blame, you're not bad with money and you're not overly money driven. But if you're constantly running after it, there's something not working quite right in the structure. And it doesn't deny the fact you've had things happen like big losses, economic downturns, And again, when we're children, we see it through our limited experience. Okay. It doesn't mean we're dumb. It means we have limited experience. And that is what gets in our way. So instead of trying to identify the problem, like I'm bad with money because my dad lost his job when I was 8. And we just spent money when we got it because that's just how it worked, right? Because it was going to go away anyway. Doing that isn't going to fix the problem. Okay. Knowing the cause of the problem does not provide the solution. Giving yourself a framework to stabilize where you're at. Because if you're having an issue with money right now, learning how to stabilize yourself from the inside out is going to give you a bigger range of motion than purely identifying the cause, because that doesn't fix it. And here's what I say to back that up. Every person develops internal systems long before they understand what money represents. Okay. Those systems are built through observation, repetition, and adaptation. We adapt. We have systems that adapt to our environment. That's why with astrology, I'm always saying it's a spectrum. Yes, the second house is resources. It's actually love and money. Not romance, not sex, love. Okay. And that's often a resource we don't get enough of as children or in the way we need it. Our parents may be trying to provide what they needed. And we can blame them all day long. But let me tell you how the conversation has improved in the last 15 years when it comes to parenting. Okay. They formed quietly because we're talking pre-cognitive understanding. Okay. So you were a baby and you were picking up your parents' nervousness or worry, or their fighting, or their avoidance when they were stressed. Okay. So a lot of times what we think of as a choice is actually a pattern. Oh, like I'm down on money, I got to go hustle. That's a pattern. That's not a choice. Think I need more motivation. Maybe you don't need more motivation. You need to be more clear about which would be sustaining to you, because money is usually only a small part of that equation. I remember in 1999, I was finally making headway on getting a day job to support my 2 children and myself. And I got offered a job at this really great housing not-for-profit in Portland, Oregon called Central City Concern. And I came in and it was for an admin position. I'd never been an admin before. I started in management out of college, but nobody believed me because I was a girl and I'd lived all over the world. And so I walk in a suit and I come in looking like an executive. And I'm trying to overqualify myself for this job because I don't think I'm going to want it. Right. I'm in the running for a dream job with a company that taught languages and English as a second language to business people. And it could take me all over the world again. And I was like, ooh, I'll be making enough money. I can hire a mama's helper or second pair of hands, take the kids. Oh, what a great way to be. Needless to say, I got home from overqualifying myself. And it's funny, I could feel my guidance going like, think, not in a mean way. Like, you dummy, we've thrown you the right thing. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want that. Speaking of the outcome, I don't want that job. I can't use like photocopiers and I have like this blood feud. If I can screw up a business machine, I will. Okay, the printer's not going to work, the photocopier is going to go haywire, and God forbid a fax, because we still used faxes. I'm like, it's just going to jam up. By the time I got home, about an hour later, my phone was ringing. Laurie, we love everything about you. Would you consider taking this job if it led to a promotion and it would mean X amount a year? But we need you to really know the organization. So you'd stay in the admin position and work in lots of departments to really get to know us. And then you'd move into the marketing director position that we'll be needing in 6 months' time. That sounded better. Remember, I was 29. Sounded better. And I decided to be honest. And I said, I would love to do that. And I'm honored, but I'm in the running for a job like that really fits my qualifications. Um, they're trying to decide between me and this other person. Can I let you know the outcome? I'm supposed to know tomorrow. Oh, absolutely. We'll wait for you. We created this for you on a platter. And I'm like, okay, I'll let you know if it doesn't work out. Hubris and ego. And so, anyway, needless to say, that's where I ended up working because they chose the other person. And they didn't choose the other person because they were a guy and I was a woman and I had kids and they did that. No, it was down to skill sets. And they were trying to decide which set of skill sets to go with. And they were very transparent and it was a great company too. And that would have been a cool job. Unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, given the way the world went in the next couple of years, um, it all worked out. And it was literally the job with Central City Concern was the best place I've ever worked. It was a fulfilling job. I got to learn how to write grants. In fact, the first grant I got to write was a Ryan White grant for people living with AIDS and providing housing for, and it was a beautiful special project we did. It had meaning, it had depth, it had good benefits. And the only thing I was stuck on is it didn't make enough money yet, but it would be, but it was the work environment. The more I could stabilize me, the more my life stabilized. Instead of looking at all the reasons things weren't working out, I had to look at what was working. And that's a pretty extreme example, but I'm sure you guys have stories of things working out in unexpected ways. Because, when we try to envision this perfect scenario, guess what? We can't even come close to what would actually be perfect. So there has to be an element of trust of, I know this is working out. I just don't know all the ways it is. That's why when you guys try to get me to speak about things, they're like, tell us more. I'm like, I don't know more. I know this. If I try to fill that story in and it doesn't go the way everybody wants it to, then I'm the bad guy. I try to stop conjecture because we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the information we need. So we can only work with what we've got. So let's talk about what the money wound is so you can get a little better idea as you're moving through this week. You might be like, oh, I see. Okay, so I can stabilize a little bit better here. And trust me, you're going to love this book. I'm very proud of it. Um, there are things I have loved about my writing and other things, but I've always felt they could be better. This is the first book I really feel like in a long time that it deserves a cover and to be on paper. So, and it will be. So, what is the money wound? The money wound is a systemic learned pattern. So, it's a pattern. And if you can recognize a pattern, you can change a pattern. Okay, it organizes how a person relates to safety, value, and resources. So I'm saying money because that's how most people associate your resources and how you resource yourself, right? But it's bigger than that. Notice I mentioned best work environment. I need a great work environment. I need people who have a sense of humor. I need people who care deeply. I've always said I work with people who give a shit. Um, It's not a singular event. It's not one time. It's not just because your mom or dad lost their job or they were a single parent or the economy tanked. It's not a singular event. It's not a diagnosis and it's not a personality trait. Okay. Don't buy into popular astrology that says, oh, because I have this placement here, I'm always going to be bad at this or I'm always going to be good at that. Those are fixed interpretations that don't always serve your highest good. It's a spectrum. It can be when conditions are right, I operate like this. When conditions are more stressful, I do this. And we cover this. Okay. The money wound forms during early experiences, family dynamics, cultural messaging, economic conditions, and social expectations. Okay. It reflects how a person learned to interpret security and risk in the environment they grew up. And none of us really truly like risk. Some people are a little more risk taking than others, but most of us like to feel secure. For some people, they need a lot of freedom to feel secure. And it feels like a risk to be locked down, right? Long before a child understands numbers, income, or responsibility, their nervous system is already noticing patterns. So it's not even cognitive, it's just you're picking it up because babies are very observant. They observe through all their senses and they're very lunar in their nature. They're in their sensing, feeling body. They're not cognifying it into words yet. They know they're uncomfortable. They know there's tension in the air. They know they feel alone. They want to be held and feel secure. That's why babies like to be held or swaddled to feel secure. So, and what they're noticing in these patterns is who's stressed out, what creates conflict, what feels unsafe, what is rewarded and what is avoided. These observations are not evaluated, they're absorbed. Babies can't decide what's good, what's bad, what's a misinterpretation, what was a misunderstanding, that was there a resolution? They won't know that. They know when things are calm and secure, they know when things are out of whack. And then it gets absorbed and the baby then starts making choices. It's not really a choice, but we're going to use that word for lack of words. But there are decisions on behavior. If I cry, I get picked up. If I cry, I'm isolated. So I learn not to cry. Okay. It's not about intelligence. It's not about effort. It's not about lack of effort. It's not about being lazy. It's not about being anti establishment. Almost all of those are social tropes and social programs, including the angry young person, the rebellion. And you don't have to get conservative when you're older either. That's a trope too, right? People often assume their financial challenges exist because they are careless, unmotivated, or irresponsible, or unlikable, or they're not a team player because of all the things people say. Your managers could have said it to you. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. And do you really need to work on a team? There's lots of ways to make money. There is your calling and there's resourcing. They're different. It's structure. It's about creating the right structures. And sometimes that structure is your work environment. Sometimes that structure, it's not always down to the dollar amount. Because again, there's lots of ways to bring income in. Back before 2008, like 2005, 2006, the economy was already bad for those who weren't in the higher income brackets. Okay. And we couldn't cut one more thing out of our budget. And my husband had a stable job. He worked for the state. And he was at the highest level he could be without leaving the job he enjoyed doing. And if he went to a desk job, if he left the field, he would have been miserable. But we hadn't seen a job like a COLA in 6 years. And so when people were saying tighten your belt, I was like, we don't have any more notches left. We're going to get cut in half. So the only other option I had was to bring more in. And I was like, well, I don't know how to run a business, but I can figure it out. It's, even if I'm bringing in 100 more bucks a month, 500 more bucks a month, it takes some pressure off. So it's important, you know. So a person can be highly capable and still feel overwhelmed by financial decisions. They can understand budgeting and still avoid looking at their accounts. They can succeed professionally and still feel unsafe charging for their work. There's a lot of spiritual teachers, readers, people in the metaphysical world who are way undercharge. And then there are those who are fakes who way overcharge. It's so funny. It's Dunning-Kruger effect. Um, the contradictions aren't failures, they're signals. It's information. Okay. It's just information. It means you need to change up the structure. And that's what we do. We learn to switch up the structure. So it's important for you to build a structure forward. And that structure starts with asking yourself just a couple of questions. When do I feel most secure? And don't say payday. Because payday might be stressful because you're like, oh, great, now I got to pay bills, right? But when do you really feel most secure? Is it sitting outside and soaking up a beautiful spring day and smelling the flowers? Is it knowing that you've done a job well done? Is it listening to your kids laugh and enjoy full bellies? Is it, when do you feel most secure? Maybe it's sitting with your honey and holding hands, not really even saying anything. No TV, no music, just sitting, kind of letting the world go by. Or maybe it is laughing together, watching a movie or telling silly stories. When do you feel most secure? Focus on that. And that helps change the way your brain looks at the world. If you can focus on, this is how I feel secure, instead of, oh my God, I'm not secure. I'm not feeling okay. And it's not bypassing to look at what does work for you. It is more like, here's my foundation. From this, everything grows. Okay. And by paying attention to that, it's like fertilizing a garden, right? It's giving it the nutrients. Because the more you look at what's scary, what isn't working, your fears about hanging on to what you think you could lose, all of that is like depleting the soil of its vitamins and its minerals and all the good stuff, right? So you want to fertilize your stability by focusing on what you know already does make you feel better. Okay. So some questions you can ask yourself, and I have a much longer list, but I'm going to give you 3 questions you can ask yourself this week. Which financial behaviors in your life feel repetitive or automatic instead of intentional? Okay. And I'm not talking about auto pay bills. Okay. I'm talking about like when you're spending money or when you're putting money away. Is it repetitive, knee jerk, impulsive, something you do on a default setting? Or is it something you've really considered and decided, nope, I'm going to do that? Okay. Where do you notice the difference between what you logically know and what you instinctively or reflexively do? So, I should be doing this, and then you go do this other thing reflexively. And then the last question, what becomes possible? And I really want you to think about this one. What becomes possible when you view your behavior as a learned structure instead of personal failure? Oh, that's a big one. So there's a lot more to it than that, but this is just to get you started. Because honestly, I think we're going to see, like mid April, we're going to see an economic whammy, and then we're going to see a rise. So I do think things will start stabilizing after the end of the month. There's just some good economic news coming in, especially around the 23rd. I know everybody wants it to be it. I do not think that is the only possibility. It is one of many possibilities, but I don't think it's the dirt nap. I don't. We'll see what happens because things just kind of change radically as we move into the end of the month. And not necessarily radically in a bad way, but it's also not like Fantasy Island, okay? We're still going to have to deal with a mess. So focus on what you can do, okay? Look at what's in your control because the best, we don't just let go. If you've ever played on the bars, and a lot of you younger people haven't, but when I was a kid we had monkey bars, and you'd swing on the monkey bars. Some people have old fashioned playgrounds, other people don't because they're a liability. But you don't swing and let go with both hands. You have one that gives you propulsion. You're holding on to one and you swing and you grab the next, you let go to use momentum. So you're never just one handedly doing this. You have your hand, you let go, you move to the next. And that's what we're doing. Okay. If you let go with both hands, you fall down. Right. So we're not letting go. We're moving our momentum towards something. Okay. And that's the best way I can describe it. If you have more questions around that, go ahead and ask me, especially if you're a supporting patron. Feel free to ask, regardless of your level. I would love to help people more with this because we're all going to need it as we go forward because what was isn't coming back. But what will be is a little bit in our hands. We get to influence those who represent us. We get to be involved in local and we get to build our lives forward. And that is in our hands. So, anyway, I hope you have a beautiful week. And remember, just because stuff is going on in the news doesn't mean you can't have a good day, a good week, a good month, a good year. On a personal level, everything can work out.